Hey everybody, welcome back. This is Georgiana with Expressions Craft Studio, and I can't wait to show you what we're doing this week. All right, take two. Let's try this again. Actually, it's take three. What we're going to be doing this week is some cards for, again, Project Christmas Cheer, but we're going to be using digital images, and this is something that I have been collecting for decades. I love working with digital images, making my own labels or just whatever, fancying up a memo or you name it. I love adding digitals to it. So today we're going to be using digitals because I saw a special with Creative Fabrica, and I'll link it below, where for, I think it was $9.99, I got a free trial period, a free month, and then it was going to be $9.99 a month after that or something like that. Well, you're supposed to get 10 downloads for that $9.99 or whatever it was in the first 30 days. Something happened, and toward the end of my 10 downloads, my computer glitched, and it took it a while to refresh, and I had to back up a few pages, and apparently something got confused somewhere. Could have been me. I'm not going to say it wasn't me. But because of that, I had lost track of how many I had downloaded. I've assumed it was keeping track for me, in all honesty. And so I just kept downloading. Well, at some point I realized you've downloaded more than the 10 free, that was included in your free offer. So I started looking, and it was still letting me download, so I just kept going. Now, if you don't typically buy digital images, you may not realize that $1 a piece for an image pack is a really good deal most of the time, especially if you're getting to pick the images you want. Each pack usually contains multiple images, anywhere from 6 to 14, or sometimes even more than that. It just depends on the creator and what they've chosen to put in there. So I ended up, somehow my account got switched from the free $9.99, free first month, and then $9.99 a month after that, to $4.99 a month, I think. And I don't quote me on the prices because I might be wrong, but it's like $4.99 a month, I believe, for unlimited downloads. Unlimited downloads. So I'm going to say that one more time for those of you in the back. Unlimited downloads. That's right. Unlimited. Now, some people don't have a problem collecting crafting supplies or office supplies or fancy cars, and some of us do. And fortunately for me, it's not the fancy car category. It is crafting supplies, and I consider digital images a crafting supply. So I went crazy. I spent a day and a half the first time, off and on, with meals and potty breaks and different things in between, downloading digital packs. And then I went back another day looking for something specific and downloaded more. I'm not going to tell you exactly how many it was, but I will say it was somewhere between 500 and 1,000 digital kits for packs. That's a lot. That's a really lot when you consider that each one has multiple images in it. So, or most of them do. There were a few that didn't, and those were a different story. They were, because I was getting them free, I probably wouldn't have spent what they originally wanted on them because it was included in my offer, my deal. I went ahead and got it. Even though I really liked them, I wouldn't have spent whatever it was they were asking for. So, in a nutshell, I have a long way to go before I finish unzipping all of these downloaded folders. But I did go ahead and just unzip some of the Christmas ones so I could focus on my Christmas cards because I really want to keep it simple. I like the digitizing process itself. I like the layering of the different images. It's a different look than layering all of the ephemera and different things on the card, which I like that look too, but it takes a little bit longer. And that's okay if you got time, and I do have time, but I want to try something different because I love the digital stuff. So I printed out yesterday or the day before some of my digital images, and this is one. I can get 4 to a sheet if I do a standard US 8.5 by 11 sheet. If you wanted them smaller, like you just wanted to make it like a little aperture or something on your card, you could get even more than that to a page. But I went with 4 to a page because I was trying to keep it simple. So just to give you kind of an idea of what I'm talking about, this card contains this background image is 1, Santa is 2, the bell swag is 3, the scroll here with the sentiment on it is 4, and the sentiment itself is 5. So that's 5 separate images that are layered on top of one another to create this finished look. And you could do a lot more with that if you wanted to. I was pretty happy with this just for, spending an hour or 2 playing with it. Here's one where I went ahead and added a different sentiment to it. Otherwise, everything else is the same. And these two, I left the sentiment off because I wanted to add something else. And then I forgot to erase this little line down here. I don't know if you can see it. But my sentiment will cover that up. So that's 4 from that sheet. And these are all different packs or digikits or whatever you want to call them. So, you can mix and match stuff here. So this is another one where I pulled one scene from the background scene of a little town or village or whatever. So that's one layer. Then I added the Santa for the second, the snowman for the third, and then this Merry Christmas banner, which was 1 image. So that's 4 images total, layered together and printed out on photo paper. We bought so many printers over the years. I've got stacks and stacks of photo paper. I used to do scrapbooking. I don't do it anymore because I've switched to digital. So for me, I'm just going to use it up doing these because I really like the way these look on photo paper. They're so clear and bright, and you can print them out on regular cardstock or some kind of copy paper, but they're not going to have the same quality look to them because it's going to be a little duller. The ink's not going to rest on top of the paper like it does with photo paper. It's going to be absorbed into the paper, so it's just going to be a little bit duller. It still can look really nice. I just like this look better. So that was the second sheet I printed out. And the third sheet was this one here. And this was all 1 pack. And there were actually, I think, somewhere roughly 12, 14, maybe a few more images, something like that in this pack. But I just picked the 4 that I liked the best, that had a little bit of light shining through. And I probably won't even add a sentiment to the front of these. I'm not sure yet. I like them just the way they are. Now, my printer was starting to run out of ink, so these aren't perfect, but I think they're good enough. If you look at them straight on, you can't really see the streaking quite as much. And I think they look really nice. So I'm going to cut those out, and then I'm going to cut out some cards. And I didn't want to just use white because the first 8 are so white anyway. I want to put them on a colored cardstock. So it'll either be one of these 2 reds that I've chosen, or it'll be this green. I really want a darker green, but I don't have a darker green. I do think that the Santas will just go on white because they're so dark, the background's so dark and complete anyway, that I think they'll look okay on a white cardstock. So I'm going to cut this stuff out and score my cards, and then I'll be back and we can start putting stuff together and see how they look. Alright, so I've got everything cut and scored and folded. And now I'm deciding, do I want to glue these onto the front, or how do I want to attach them? And there's different ways you can do this. I'm going to use tape. And the reason is, sometimes this glue, the Barely Art glue probably won't, but some of it can cause your photo paper to bubble up. The other thing I don't want to do is I don't want to be trying to smooth it out over the photo paper and scratching my design. Now I could flip the card over and do it that way, but I think unless I run out of tape, I'm just going to use tape. And so the way I do this, which you probably already know, but in case you don't, I thought I'd show you, is you just run your double-sided tape across the back, and I have a nice squaring tool here that I like to use just because it makes all of my ends nice and square. And you just lay it down along the edge, and you don't want to go over the existing piece of tape, but you want to come right up next to it. And I like mine as close to the edge as I can get it. And then rip. Now you can rip this tape with your fingers. I just like a nice even edge because it allows me to get, I don't know, more accurate, I guess, with my taping. I can butt it right up next to the edge because it's nice and straight, and I like that. But if you don't care, you do you. There is no right or wrong. There is more than one way to do everything, and that's that. So I do like to burnish my tape down just a little bit just to make sure it's adhered nicely. And then I'm going to attach these to the cards. So I think that actually goes over there, yeah. So I've got two different shades of red that are pretty similar. And I'm going to decide, do I want this one here? Or would I want it on this one? It looks pretty good on that one. Actually, I like it better on that red. So what I like to do, let me grab my needle tool here, pokey tool, whatever you call it, and I just like to peel back all four corners just a little bit and fold them over. That first one throws everything off a little bit. That's all right. Let's do this one. And I make sure that the tail end is pointed out because I'm going to want to grab that. So I need to do this one here. All right. By leaving the tape all the way on there, it gives me a little bit of wiggle room or the ability to adjust this a little bit without the tape completely adhering before I'm ready for it to. So once I've got it where I want it, oh, of course I moved it around. Just a little bit. All right, so then I want to push those corners down, and then you could pull your tape out. And because I don't want to scratch the photo paper, I'll flip it over and just make sure that tape has got a good contact. And there you go. This one needs a sentiment, but otherwise it's done. And I don't know about you. But I really like it. I love the swag with the beads on it and the ornaments and the bells and the bows and Santa down here, because you just know he's wishing everybody a Merry Christmas, right? So there's one. Let's do this one. Do we want this one on the green or the darker red? I like it on the green. I also like it on the darker red. Which one do I like better? Let's see here. Kind of leaning toward the green. Yeah. Now something else you can do, and I brought the tape over here to do this, but I don't know that I'll do it just yet. I thought about running a piece of tape around the edges here and then embossing that in gold probably for this one. And I might still do that on some. I haven't decided. But you can use embossing powder with double-sided tape in case you didn't already know that. And that way we give a nice gold edge around it. I also thought about just embossing this half of the folder, but you're not going to see very much of it, so I don't know that I want to go to all that trouble. So yeah, I think I'll just adhere this one, and then we'll pause while I work on the rest, and if I do anything else interesting, I will come back and show you. So just like we did before, we're going to pull our corner out just a little bit. And you could put tape in the middle of this too if you want. That won't work as well with this method because you'd have to pull that backing piece off of there first, but it is an option if that's something you want to, if you feel like you need to stick it down a little bit better. So I'm going to lay this down just so I have a flat surface. Try to get it centered. Alright, looks pretty good. Now I'm just running the pad of my finger here. I don't want to put, like I said, I don't want to scratch it. I don't know that it's that delicate, but I don't want to find out after I've done all this work either. So, there you go. What do you think? And we'll put a sentiment on the inside, and I may stamp it in black, or I may stamp it in white, or I may stamp it with embossing ink and then emboss it. I don't know yet. Or I could even use vinyl. I haven't done that in a while. So we don't need to try every technique today though, Georgiana. Yeah. We'll come back to that. So I'm going to finish these up. And if I, like I said, if I stop and do anything else different than what I've just done, I will record that for you. All right, so I had a thought, so I came back a little prematurely. I could make a joke there, but I won't. I don't know if you remember these foam circles that I had from one of my previous weeks of the Christmas project, Christmas cheer, Christmas cards. I made snow globes, and I used this foam to give myself a little bit of height so I could put some snowflakes in them to make them shaker cards. And I thought, I kind of want to raise one of these up just to see what it would look like. So I just happened to have this foam sitting here. And as you can see, it fits pretty well on the back of the card. Now, I did decide to pull in the edges just a little bit. At first, I'd had them butted up right to the edge, but I don't really want to be able to see that from looking at the front of the card. You know, if somebody turns the card sideways, they'll be able to see it, but from the front of the card, it won't be visible. So what I did was I cut it in half. And then I cut the tops of each circle off, and then because it was just a little bit bigger than I needed, I cut a little bit more off the bottom of those pieces, so I could fit it in here. And what I'll do is I will glue these down, but it'll pop it up nicely, and I think it'll look really, really good. So I'm going to do that on this one, and then I'll come back. But I just wanted to say, you know, save these pieces. Now, this was a nice big piece, so, you know, most people would save it. But even these little pieces, this can go into the back of a sentiment to lift a sentiment up a little bit, instead of, if you don't have the, what are they called? The dimensionals, the foamy pieces that have tape on both sides. You can use just your craft foam. So, you know, you can use what you have. And the reason I decided to go ahead and show you this is because I want to show you as many different ways as I can think of to kind of spruce up these digital images. If you don't think you like them because you prefer the more standard card making, that's fine. Everybody, you know, has their preferences. I certainly understand that. But if you think that they just need a little something extra, maybe you're thinking, well, I like that, but what else could I do with it? So I'm going to show you a couple of other things as I think of them, which probably dragged this video out longer than I'd intended, but I think it's important that you see that you have options, lots and lots of options. So I'm going to pause this again. I'm going to finish gluing these up or taping them up or whatever I'm doing, and I'll be back to show you anything else. All right, I had mentioned using some tape to do embossing around the outside, or yeah, heat embossing. And so I'm going to show you that real quick. I'm using a narrow tape. It's what, a 1/4 inch, but that's because the size of my card front is going to only leave about 1/4 to 1/8 of an inch. So I'm actually going to run it all the way to the edge. I think my cat just scared herself. She's got the zoomies. Now you could also do this with a zig marker or, you know, other types of adhesives this will work with. I'm actually going to do the sides and then go back over and do the top and bottom. And the reason for that is because if you don't butt these up exactly, there'll be a slight gap. And I noticed that when I taped up another one. So I'm going to do these a little bit separately. I didn't get that quite all the way to the edge, but I think it'll be all right. So what I'll do is I will get my embossing powder out and to remove this backing, pour the embossing powder over the top of that, and then heat it up with the embossing tool. And then once I have that done, I'll go back and do the top and the bottom. Just repeat those steps for the top and the bottom. And that'll put a nice gold edge around this card. And I think you can see that the way it's cut, that will just cover just over the edge of the embossed area. So that's why I'm using the narrow tape instead of a wider tape, because you just are wasting your tape and your embossing powder if you do it that way. So I'm going to set that one aside. That one needs special attention. And I think I've taped everything else up except maybe for... No, I have in fact taped everything else up. Okay, so I'm going to pause this. I'm going to start kind of organizing this mess I've got here, and then I'll be back. And I apologize for my cat. She's apparently bored and needs some attention. So I'll attend to her as well. Our gypsy girl does not like being ignored. Alright, so I've got my embossing powder. I remembered to turn off my fan. Trim that a little bit. The tape was sticking out the end. So I'm going to pull the tape off and pour some embossing powder on. Now on this one I'm going to use white. Another one I'll use gold when I get to that one. So there's my white. Now I don't really care about it getting anywhere else in there because it's not going to show up, so I'm not going to use my little talcum bag to keep the powder from sticking, because I don't think it will, and I don't care if it does. It's not going to be seen. I'll heat this up and I'll be right back. Alright, tape did bubble up a little bit, and maybe that's my fault. Maybe I did not stick it down good enough. Although I don't even see where it did that now. Oh, right there. So I'm just going to try and press it back out. And it did wrinkle my card a little bit more than I would like, but I will find a way to flatten that back out even if I have to iron it. So where'd the tape? Here it is. So now I'll put the other tape on, and I will go over these edges here just so there's not a gap in the embossing. The hardest part, I think, for me is getting it right on the edge. I'll do this end. Just overlap that a little bit. See, I'm pulled away from the edge just a little. Overlapping again. And burnishing really well. I did at least remember to turn my fan off. And while I was on the hunt for supplies, I remembered, or I found something else that I want to talk to you about. So I told you I was printing these on photo paper. Well, I have scads of it from years ago. So for me, it's no big deal. It's no extra cost. It's in my stash, and I've literally got hundreds of sheets. But this one accidentally printed out on cardstock, and you can see the difference. Now, because these printed, I'll go ahead and use them. But I like the glossy a whole lot better. Again, it's personal preference. But you can see how the ink just kind of absorbs into the paper and it doesn't rest on top of that glossy surface. So I prefer the glossy ones, but like I said, I will use those. So don't go out and buy a bunch of photo paper unless you just really want the glossy look. Something else you can do, and I don't know if they still make it, I would assume that they do, it is brochure paper. And it's like photo paper. It's usually glossy on both sides, so you can print on both sides. It's not quite as thick as photo paper, so it doesn't have the same GSM or weight to it, but it's good enough for something like this. And like I said, you can usually print it on both sides if you can still find it. If I can find a link for it, I will put it in the comments below. I haven't bought any for 15, 20 years. I haven't needed it, but if they do, I would think they still make it. So you're going to be able to buy a big pack of it for probably a lot cheaper than photo paper, and it prints out nicely too, just so you know. So while we're here, we'll go ahead and finish adding our embossing powder. Oops, finger stuck to my tape. Set this real quick and be right back. All right, here's another one I want to show you real quick. I actually used a glue stick to just go around the edges, put my embossing powder on it, and then heat it up. And then I was able to go back. This whole area got missed somehow. I was able to go back over with the glue stick and just redo the whole thing. And that's a little bit easier than tape. And it didn't leave the edges where the tape crossed over each other, so I like that. The other thing that you can do with the glue stick, instead of embossing powder, you can use the glue stick and then toner foil. So the toner foil will essentially look the same way the embossing powder does. It's just you just lay it down, burnish it a little bit, and peel it away, and it sticks wherever there is glue stick, or a zig marker, in which case you want to let that get to where it's tacky. So it would essentially be the same, and you can just keep reusing that foil until you've used every bit of the foil that's on the carrier sheet. So that's another option that you have, and if you want to know how to do that, I think I've showed that in other videos. I know I learned that technique from Genevieve Designs. She makes beautiful journals. I love the way it looks, and you could add any color foil to that you want. So that's another idea for you. Another added little tip, I do wish I'd used my embossing buddy on this. I have used it before, and it does help keep the embossing powder from sticking quite so bad, because it's just a plastic tray, and I think they're originally designed for use with glitter. They do work with embossing powder as well, but again, I wish I had thought to use my embossing buddy just so I don't have so much cleanup to do, because it does stick to this plastic tray quite nicely. Okay, so I mentioned how you could use heat transfer toner foil. These are some of my leftover scraps, and you can see I've used them before. And I'm going to, usually I use glue with this, but I'm pretty sure it will also work with the tape. So let's try it and see. Oh yeah, now it's a lot stickier than the glue stick would be, so it's gonna resist you a little bit more, but it does work. And you can just keep going over an area until you get it where you want it. A little bit of I would say I think I prefer this with the glue stick, but you can do it with tape as well. So it's good to know. It's always good to know what your options are. That way you can use what you have on hand and not have to run to the craft store. Not that many of us hate running to the craft store, but sometimes you're in the middle of something and you just need to get it done. And where I live, I have one and one only option for a craft store, and it used to be my favorite, but it's not anymore, and I don't really want to run into town if I don't have to. So I just keep going over it until I get all of that bare tape that's exposed covered with foil. This is like an antique gold, but you can use any color foil. In fact, I thought about using the red, but I decided to stick with the gold. Now, if you end up with any leftover stickiness after this, you can use your embossing buddy to go over that to help remove any extra tackiness. But see how you just keep reusing this? And like I said, this was something I learned from Genevieve Designs. And my friend Bonnie turned me on to her, and I just think she's fabulous. Bonnie and Genevieve. And I love this technique. I love the vintage look it gives it. I love the ease of using it. Yeah. There's not anything about it I don't like. I love the fact that you can use up every bit of your scrap foil. Just keep laying it down and picking it up until it's all gone. So don't throw away those scraps, ladies and gentlemen, because they come in really useful. Kind of wanted to pull that tape up from the corner, so trying to be a little extra careful there. There you go. Might need the embossing buddy on here. It's feeling kind of tacky up there. Let's grab a different piece. You take your card, which I don't know what I did with. Oh, here it is. Your card front. And you lay that down over the front. It's stuck on that edge. There we go. Look at that. See a little bit of a gap there where my tape didn't quite come together, but overall I really like the look of it. It adds a little extra bling without any real effort. So I always save my scraps. That I learned from Nancy with Nancy Stamps. She used to be a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, but now she works with a lot of different companies. She's very good. So I'll put the link for her, if I remember, down in the comment section below for her group and her channel. A lot of good techniques there for foiling, especially. They really focus on foiling, although they do a lot of other stuff. I just keep all my scraps in a folder. So this is the last one we need to attach. It kind of wants to attach itself. There's just enough sticky on that. So I did refill my glue bottle, since I didn't put tape on this one. Just go ahead and glue this down. Slide a little bit that way. I've overfilled my bottle a little bit. It's wanting to burp out glue bubbles. Oh, I love that. That's actually turned out to be one of my favorites. So I'm just spreading that glue out on the back side of the card because I don't want to scratch the photo paper. And again, I don't know that it's that delicate. I just don't want to take any chances. Look at that. Oh my goodness. That's pretty. That is downright pretty. Oh. Alright, well we might as well do a quick slideshow since I finished them all. This one's just on plain white. This one is on a red card base, and I used the tape method with the embossing, white embossing powder around it. This one again is just on a white card base. I love that one. That's my kind of Santa. This one is just on a green card base, no frills. And here we have one on a red card base, no frills. And this one, my glue wasn't working because I needed to fill it, and so my card got a little wonky. I'm going to need to press it under some stuff, but This one is the glue stick that is heat embossed with embossing powder, and then I used the I don't know if you can see it, the foam underneath just to raise that up a little bit, give it a little bit of a shadow. I'm not sure I like it, but it's too late now. Normally I do, I'm just not sure I like it in this application. So there's one just on green. Here's another one that's raised but on a plain card base. I like it a little bit better on the plain card base. Another one that's just plain. And then these last two that I need to add a sentiment to. So I'll add sentiments to these, put my information on the back, a nice sentiment on the inside, and there's 12 more cards to add to our stack of Christmas cards for Project Christmas Cheer, which I've talked about before, but those cards go to the Angel Card Project and Cards for Soldiers. So if you have any questions, please drop them in the comments and I'll be happy to answer. And if there's anything you'd like to see, if I know how to do it, I'll do it. And if I don't, we'll wing it and figure it out together. Otherwise, this brings us up to, what did I say earlier, 244 cards so far for this year's card project. And these ones are good because these can go to the military because there's no glitter on them. I'm not sure about the foil, just to be, cautious. I won't send any with foil on them, but these can definitely go to project or Cards for Soldiers. You got some loose embossing powder on there. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. Like I said, if you have any questions, let me know. And I'll list any products that I used in the bottom. I don't have affiliate links right now, so they're just the links that I could find for you. And otherwise, I'm going to go eat my dinner because my stomach says it's time, and I've got some teriyaki chicken waiting on me. So, till next time, ladies and gentlemen, happy crafting.